Welcome to Spinning Back Clique, where each week here at MMA Junkie, we take a quick spin through the biggest stories in the sport. I am back from furlough this week, and I've got the boys from MMA Junkie Radio, Gorgeous George and Goze with me. So let's get them on the clock right away. Guys, Khabib Nurmagomedov posted on social media over the weekend. He kind of hinted that September was when he's looking to come back. Now, that's a few months out. But if he's right, what do you guys want to see happen at lightweight in the meantime? Should Tony Ferguson wait? I mean, he had this fight with Justin Gaethje. Maybe they could still squeeze that in. Then you got Conor McGregor out there. I mean, there's a lot of options on the table with some big names at lightweight. So I'm curious, if September is the date, how do you want to see the lightweight division play out in the meantime? Let's start with George. Let's put 3 minutes on the clock. Have at it.
Yes, I would like to see them revisit Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Tony Ferguson. I think we're back to square one, and so I'm willing to wait until early September. If you look at the previous 5 years or so, they're either coming at you on Labor Day weekend or the weekend after that, which coincides with the start of the NFL season. But yeah, I want that. And so now I want Conor McGregor versus Justin Gaethje. And what I really would like, though, is for those fights to be pretty close together. I want to keep them on the same timeline because I want them to fight at the end of the year. So now that we have those four sorted out, you got Islam Makhachev, Charles Oliveira, maybe I think those two should link up. And then I want to preserve Dustin Poirier versus Dan Hooker. I think that just makes the most sense. When they fight, I don't care so much, and it's so hard to forecast because even in September, I'm still not picturing a full arena. I'm picturing the Apex. Anything before September, I guess I'm picturing Fight Island. We're a month away from Fight Island, and I'm sure they're going to want to come in with a blast on Fight Island. But I think I want to preserve Khabib versus Tony for sure for September, and the rest you can do with it as you wish.
Yeah, a lot of big names you mentioned there. Like I said, even outside of those big four names, there's a bunch of big lightweights. Goze, what do you think? I mean, the idea of preserving those fights the way they were isn't a bad idea, but at the same time, now we're asking Tony Ferguson to have to sit out a little bit, right? It's not his fault that he's ready to go. So what do you think? I mean, is that September date okay, or do you want to shuffle anything? Is there any good fix here?
Personally, if I'm Tony Ferguson, I think I roll the dice and I just take a fight however it's presented to me, whether it's Gaethje, whether it's Khabib, just whatever earlier, better. Because right now, tomorrow's not promised. I think you've got to make money. And like you said, Tony's been coming off a longer layoff than anyone. So the guy needs to make money, especially in this time. But I'm going to contradict myself a little bit here. And I'm going to say if I were his manager, I would probably tell him to wait this one out. Because, listen, there's got to be something to just personally having a fight scheduled so many times and having that drop off and going through those emotions. There's got to be something to be able to have a little bit of closure there. And so, I mean, you're battling yourself. You're battling the situation, possibility of injury. You can get infected at any time, man. I just think that if you're Tony Ferguson, just take what you can right now and get a fight. Stay sharp. And then when it comes to guys like Conor McGregor, that's pretty interesting because I don't know if I could see him fight under these circumstances. This doesn't seem like something for Conor. The guy fights off of the energy of the crowd, the moment, all of that's going to be gone. He's just going to be there in a room with just a few people. That's not the Conor McGregor experience. He's got money. He doesn't need to do it. So I don't know if he fights anytime soon.
It's a crazy position, man. I mean, we think about all there really is to gain for Tony Ferguson is the financial aspect of it, right? I mean, there's nothing to gain from winning another interim title, but you do need that money. So, interesting position. We'll see what happens. I'm with you guys, though. I'd like to see those two fights stay intact the way they were, Khabib and Tony, Gaethje and Conor. Now, let's talk about the bantamweight division. I want to say it's a kind of a similar position in just the fact that, some fights got changed, and now you got to figure out where do you want to put them. Now, Jose Aldo was supposed to challenge Henry Cejudo for the title before the travel ban bumped him out. Dominic Cruz agreed to step in. We know that fight was never signed, but at least it was floated out there and it was going to happen. So now that the schedule's resetting, we don't really know, kind of when it's going to happen, but the UFC's got options now. They can move stuff around. I know a lot of people didn't like the Aldo fight to begin with. So what do you do now? Do you go back to Aldo Cejudo, or do you change things up a little bit because we got a fresh schedule? So Goze, put on your UFC matchmaker hat, decide what you do with the company. What do we do at bantamweight? 2 minutes on the clock. Have at it.
Man, you said it perfectly. Not a lot of people were into that matchup when it was first announced, Jose Aldo. There were very few people that pumped their fist up and said, this is what we've been waiting for. It's just not something people were into. And I think the way the UFC is operating right now, very, very day to day, and I think even coming back, they're going to want eyes on the sport. And to do that, I think you're going to have to go with the hot hand. We're going to see rankings get thrown out of the way for a while, even though they weren't really touched on too much anyway. But I think that's all going to go out the window, and they're going to go with hot hands. And a guy like Dominic Cruz, a guy like Triple G on the or Triple C, sorry, on social media, building a fight like this is what you want. You know, you want people talking, you want people chirping. A win over a guy like Dominic Cruz, who's arguably one of the greatest bantamweights of all time, I think that might do more on Triple C's resume. And I know that's something that he wants to build. So I could see that fight getting reshuffled and Dominic Cruz coming in and being the focus of that. You go with the hot hand. I think that's what you do here.
What about you, Triple G? Did you get nervous that you're going to have to make the bantamweight limit there when it goes through your hand? What do you do at bantamweight?
I can't even make 235. Imagine making 135. But yeah, you know, Goze, you made such a convincing case because I was thinking with Aljamain Sterling announcing he's at 70%, well, that opened the door for Peter Yan. You know, Peter Yan's in Thailand, not Russia. He can get out, I suppose, to this island at some point. But you're right. I guess they are going to have to come back with a bang. And you know, he versus Marlon Moraes was made, I guess. If they didn't have a problem with it then, let's do that. Let's use Aldo and Frankie Edgar to kind of put over, not that Sterling needs to be put over, but like the Sanhagens of the world and others like that. So, yeah, it goes like, you actually just made a compelling case and convinced me right now because I was going to say insert Yan, but I think I'm into the Cruz Cejudo matchup. Great job.
Yeah, I tell you what. I mean, Aldo I thought was picked because it was in Brazil. Now it's in Brazil anymore. Let's give me another option. If Aljamain's ready, I think he deserves it. But you make a good point about the recovery there. All right, let's see. Well, look, we've talked about UFC 249, and all the talk has really been around Khabib, Tony, Gaethje, all that good stuff that was there at the main event. We talked about that already. But let me ask you a different question. Outside of that headliner, however that one resets, what's one fight that you think should have been saved? And I'll go flexible with this. You can either do the original 249 card. You can go the one that was, you know, kind of updated a little bit at Tachi Palace. Give me one fight outside of that main event you think needs to be saved. It needs to be booked. George, let's start with you. 2 minutes.
I would say Francis Ngannou versus Jairzinho Rozenstruik because Miocic and Cormier is kind of so set in stone at this point that what's Ngannou going to do? Ngannou hasn't fought in a while, and you have to feature him, especially because he is basically climbing right back to a title shot. And I think he's got a great opponent who's coming off a highlight reel KO over another great heavyweight who's put in his time in the sport in Alistair Overeem. So that's probably the one that I would preserve. Plus, who doesn't love a good firecracker involving the big dudes that can end it like that? You know, you can feature that on ESPN. You can feature that on you know, on a pay-per-view, wherever. It just flows wherever. I think that one needs to happen.
Yeah, it's a good point, George. I mean, on the one hand, it's a fight that everybody wants to watch, but you mentioned there are other top guys that kind of lined up, so that does make a lot of sense. Goze, certainly that's a heavyweight fight that people want to watch. Is that your pick as well, or do you got another one you think maybe that needs to be held together?
I love that one, but personally, you know, that probably would have been my choice. But, you know, Rose Namajunas and Jessica Andrade, I feel like it just has to happen again. It reminds me a lot of the first time that Amanda Nunes and Valentina Shevchenko fought, in the sense that you felt like you were watching two fights in one. In the first Valentina fight, remember, Valentina was not doing too well in the first 2 rounds, but then she turned it around, and everybody felt like if we just had a little bit more, that fight could have been a little different. So it was like watching 2 fights in one, where Rose Namajunas, she was handling Jessica Andrade up until that moment, and then there was that destructive finish. You just felt like you were watching 2 fights. It almost feels like this second fight would actually be like a rubber match of sorts. So for me, I feel like that fight still needs to happen. We need to find out where Rose is at mentally, where she's at in her career, because there's been a few times where things outside of fighting have led her down a path of possibly never doing this again. So it's just got a good storyline. They're 2 great fighters. I want to see that one happen again.
Boy, that's a good point too, man. I think that finish was so definitive. I think people forget about what that fight was like before that. I'm just going to throw it out there. Vicente Luque versus Nico Price. No rankings reason. Just that's being a hell of a fight. So I want to keep that one together. All right. We don't actually know when we're going to have MMA again. So we're talking about these fights. We don't know what's going to happen. But, you know, a lot of the major sports are talking about coming back in the next couple months, but it's going to be without a live audience. Now, we've already seen it one time in Brasilia. But what do we think about several months of shows like that? I mean, if that's a possibility, and it looks like a very strong possibility, what do you think? What kind of impact is that going to have on the sport? Will months and months of closed-door fights, not being a special unique situation or what have you, will it impact the way the fights play out, or will it maybe even impact the way you enjoy them, the way fans see them? I don't know. What do you guys think, a long version of this could do? Let's put 2 minutes on the clock and go with Goze. How about it, brother?
Whew, huge impact here, guys. I think we're going to be looking at something that's going to almost be behind the scenes. It's just going to feel like something completely different. I mean, we have a great sport in the sense that you have two individuals. You get to see one-on-one who is the better person that night. But now we're going to be in a situation where the UFC hasn't really released too much info on how this is all going to work. So picture if you have a fighter that's working with their coach, is that coach and that fighter going to literally have to be taken away for their camp for weeks at a time, right? Maybe 2 weeks before and 2 weeks after. Does that mean that coach can't get to other fighters? So what I'm getting at is, are we going to see a true representation of these fighters and their abilities? Because coaches are going to have to be very selective with their fighters and stay with certain fighters for a certain amount of time. The judges, there's no crowd that can influence their decisions or anything like that. You're going to hear every shot. It's going to seem like Rocky hitting that slab of meat. I mean, everything's going to be different about the sport. It's going to be very interesting. I just hope it makes a true representation of what these individuals have in their skill sets.
It's intriguing. It's a ripple effect for sure, man. It affects a lot. What do you think, George? What's going to happen here with the sport if it gets going like this?
Yeah, I think they can still make the fights compelling because it's all in how you present it. And if there's a belt there and there's only 20 people in the audience, you still know that the fight is not meaningless. So the fighters, a lot of them have their own personal brand that already just resonates. So again, Khabib, Conor, Cejudo, a lot of these guys, John Jones, it doesn't matter. If they're out there, they're fighting. Yeah. And guess what? Especially if they're unopposed by other sporting events. And I mean, at some point, we're all going to have our fair share of Netflix and everything we can possibly, have gone through our queue there. Yeah, our palate is wet and ready for MMA. We'll take it at any level. I think it's just going to remind us of the old days watching Tough. It meant something.
Yeah, it's not ideal, but it's better than nothing. I'll say that. Hopefully the fighters will be able to adapt. All right, last one. Let's try to predict the future a little bit. Tough to say right now, but let's talk about what we're gonna see moving forward. Everybody's trying to figure out when are we going to see fights? How are we going to see fights? Where are they going to take place? Is this Fight Island real? What's going on? So let's rub the crystal ball a little bit and let's find out where and when do we see live MMA from the UFC. We'll just make it easy. We'll say from the UFC. Again, George, let's put 2 minutes on the clock. Start with you.
Okay, so real quick, I think that In July, we're going to see the UFC full force. I think basically this last shutdown with Governor Newsom in California, I think it was through the month. I think they got to set up Fight Island. When you hear it's a month away, it probably means it's a month and a half because you're just going to run into some obstacles. So I think July 1st is just a good time for everyone to point to and look forward to. As far as the Apex Center, I think that's going to become the new T-Mobile, and I think that's going to be somewhere in September. And again, like I said when we were talking about the lightweight division, the first question, I see the first weekend or second weekend of September, which is what the UFC has always come strong with a pay-per-view. I see that happening maybe in August. They've gone to Staples and Anaheim in back-to-back years the last 2 years, and those are big markets for the UFC, easy to get to for California. But, some of those were around the Kings, around the Lakers, so we'll see there. But, hey, guys, this is what I'm thinking. October 31st, Thanksgiving Day, and let's bring back New Year's Eve because, hey, look, I'm trying to spread the positivity here. We're going to all come back from this, and there is going to be a sport, and there is going to be life to be had. It's just those crowded arenas, I don't know. But, hey, let's take over television on those days. Football's huge on Thanksgiving. Why not end it with fights? Why not bring back the 31st, or the Saturday before, which I think is the 27th, and let's close those days off because we're not making New Year's Eve plans. We're not doing that type of stuff. Halloween, it's all gone. Let's put MMA on the map on those big dates.
Goze, your brother's not in the giving mood when it comes to time. Quick, what do you got?
I'm thinking late May, guys. Maybe Memorial Day weekend is when I'm going to bust out my Hawaiian shirt for Fight Island. And then after that, as far as maybe Vegas stuff, September. And then before we see crowds again, I think it's going to be a whole year.
Yeah, I agree, guys. I've got June 6th circled on my calendar, and I'm thinking UFC Apex for probably the rest of the year. I'm thinking no crowds until next year, but at least hopefully we'll have some live fights, like as you said, on TV and hopefully here in Las Vegas. Well, guys, we know it. The UFC did their best to hold an event this weekend, whether it was the right idea or the wrong idea. They tried, but it's not happening. So pour one out for UFC 249. Buckle in for a few more weeks of quarantine. Hopefully it'll be over at the end of April, and hopefully we'll know more about the future of the sport in the coming days. And, of course, when we do, we'll talk about it all right here on Spinning Back Clique.